Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday Times Roundtable. This is the first in our new season of them. They're going to be going through the semester. If you haven't already, there's a sort of a cardboard cutout with all of the topics just at the front where you sign in. Speaking of which, if you haven't had a chance to sign in, please do, and grab some food and drink as well. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our speaker. This is Miss Anna Etienne. She is the Program Director for FIU's first food incubator. Startup FIU Food launched last year and has since worked with over 20 companies, helping small businesses scale in revenue and employment and opportunities in placing their product in Milam's supermarket, Whole Foods, Lowe's Hotel, amongst others. Startup FIU seeks to continue its partnership with local food entrepreneurs, perusing sustainability and a scalable business model. Prior to joining the team, Ms. Etienne helped launch the first and subsequent cohorts of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program at Miami-Dade College, where she served as the program manager for 3 years, connected over 200 graduates from among Miami's local business owners. Ms. Etienne spent the past several years in various roles working within the local South Florida business community, college students, and institutional leaders. Currently a doctoral student studying organizational leadership at Northeastern University, Ms. Etienne is also an alumnus of Florida International University with a bachelor's in business administration and a master's in higher education administration. So that said, let's give her a warm welcome and get the show on the road.
Hi everyone. So yes, my name is Anna, and I was not just a FIU alum, but also a first generation student, right? So there was no individual in the family or in the neighborhood that I could talk to about going to college, money, and even the concept of entrepreneurship. And so I got lucky. I had several turning points of mentors that stepped in when I didn't know what I wanted to do originally. I think I went to art school. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna be the next Betsy Johnson and move to New York, get an AA, and live a fabulous life, hate school, right? And I had mentors who cultivated and guided me in a way that my parents were not able to. And so I actually fell in love with the topic of entrepreneurship during my time at Goldman Sachs because it forced me to assess a different profile of entrepreneur, because traditionally when you think of entrepreneur, you know, let me know some of the famous entrepreneurs that you know of. The first name that comes to mind. Heard Mark? Yes. Anyone else? Exactly, right? You're thinking of the cutting edge, huge amount of capital up front, amazing story when you think of entrepreneurship. But during my time at Goldman Sachs, we worked with over 200 small businesses, and they were no Steve Jobs. It was a completely different cultural experience. And a lot of these entrepreneurs came from various countries. And so that fun part of my job led me to this opportunity here at FIU. The first offer had to do with food, so I said yes. It's like, oh, okay, yes, I get to work with businesses and eat all day. Absolutely. But it also allowed me to work with businesses I consider to be small, right? So banks traditionally consider small businesses to average above 250,000, have 3 to 4 employees, and for you to get a traditional loan, that is what's considered small. I don't consider that small. Small for me is abuela at the house selling plates, okay? Individuals that are doing 2-3 jobs plus trying to make their dreams come true, for me, that's a legit startup. So I thought it would be fun, which is why I said you're gonna need a buddy, so you might wanna get closer. I thought it'd be fun for us to profile. So we're going to talk about a few entrepreneurs from different backgrounds, and then we're going to assess how they got there, why they got there, and what their background, what those situations were. So that way, when it's your turn, you can also have access to the knowledge for the same opportunities. Is that fair? Okay, so let's start. All right. Okay, so I would like for us to go through just the generic concept of an entrepreneur, right? And then we're going to talk about the immigrant experience as an entrepreneur. And then lastly, we're going to talk about that first generation that is interested in entrepreneurship but wouldn't have the traditional access to knowledge. Fair? All right. Okay, so traditionally an entrepreneur is considered what? Somebody who creates a business, designs, and you gave me some examples, but any other examples of an entrepreneur?
I mean, it's in a different way of saying, but you see something to capitalize on, and you're the only one that see it, and it's right away, because of that, you're successful, knows the right one.
Right. Okay. Anyone else?
Someone that puts land and labor and capital together.
Right. Okay, that's an ideal concept. Anyone else?
Someone who's a good leader and can lead different people.
Absolutely. And so if we take a look at the data, it talks about 15 million new jobs being created from new companies within the past 5 years, right? So that is a lot of small businesses with the same profiles that you're describing. And so within the last, between 1977 to 2005, a majority of the jobs created in the United States have come from new businesses. And so government has gotten involved when it comes to creating platforms and opportunities similar to Startup FIU, incubators, Goldman Sachs, these mini accelerator programs to help small businesses because they're actually seeing the return on investment when it comes to new firms creating new jobs. Right? So that would be the traditional entrepreneur. So let's start to profile. This is my favorite part of my job. You guys named a few. Can you name some of the entrepreneurs on the left? Yeah. 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 I'm still saving up for my first Tesla.
I'm guessing that's Elon Musk.
Yes. Right? And so let's also take a look at the entrepreneurs on side B. You don't recognize them? Nope. Okay. So it turns out that a majority of the jobs created are from side B. So when you think of an entrepreneur, traditionally, you're thinking these are risk takers. You know, these are the people who bungee jump, right? These are the people who are willing to risk home and life and food and shelter for a dream. But side B doesn't really look like that. So if you were to profile, let's say the first picture, what would be your estimated profile of the first picture in side B? There you go. Anyone else? How many of these small convenience stores do you traditionally see in different neighborhoods? A lot, right? Bungee jumper? No. A lot of times, traditional entrepreneurs are not your bungee jumpers. They are coming from cultures that have created mitigated risks, right? So if in your country, being a business owner is a normal thing, transitioning here, you'll see it. When I go to the nail salon, when I get my hair done, I am not thinking, ooh, oh my gosh, she's such a risk taker, bungee jumper. And it turns out that these are the entrepreneurs that have been feeding the GDP within the United States. This is where we've seen I believe it's 46% of the job creation coming from small businesses. All right, so I wanna take your skills and transition to actually profiling, right? So we're gonna talk about the entrepreneur A and entrepreneur B. I'm gonna give you a little information on each entrepreneur, and then you're gonna help me find the turning point of their transition into becoming an entrepreneur. Fair? All right. So I'm gonna start with Tristan. Tristan was born in the Bronx. Sorry for the font, I'll explain it. Tristan was born in the Bronx, single parent home. His father was murdered in that community. You know, it was the ghetto, it was a dangerous environment. His mom paid for him to attend after-school program with the Boys and Girls Club. And a coach at the Boys and Girls Club noticed that he was really smart, really talented, and talked him into applying to boarding school. And so right before, I guess you could say high school, attended boarding school and experienced a completely different culture because these were the Rockefellers of the world, and was in a classroom competing with these particular entrepreneurs. Fast forward, Tristan attends Stanford, he works on Wall Street, he later creates his own branding company, and then transitions to creating a company targeting African American men, and has been able to, within the past 3 to 4 years, turn his business into a $40 million business. 3 to 4 years. All right, so that's the first profile. Second profile is an entrepreneur from Ethiopia. And he actually came to the United States in his 40s, right? And exited his country due to political issues, sought asylum here in the United States, and started working 2 to 3 jobs. During one of his jobs, one of the 4, he was laid off and decided, okay, I'm gonna start a transportation business. He was driving a taxi, he was driving a bus, he was working in offices, and decided in addition to that, he would start a transportation system, right? So this was in the 90s. Fast forward to now, his transportation company is a multi-million-dollar company. He is busing over 15,000 students. He has a fleet of 300 buses and school buses and transportation contracts. And so this didn't take 3 to 4 years, but he is still, I guess you could say, within his own right, an entrepreneur. Right, so I'm gonna see if I could play just clips of interviews from the both of them, and then we're gonna talk about them as a team.
Okay, so we're gonna make this very casual.
Okay.
These are our exciting group of students. They just started almost 2 weeks ago.
They're very close.
And,
This is awesome.
Yeah, this is gonna be nice and intimate and.
Sure. You're welcome to be.
Okay, so
Sorry.
Tristan, we want you to start kind of from the beginning. I think you have a very inspiring story to tell.
Mhm.
So if you can just kind of start from square one, kind of how you got
Sure.
to the West Coast, and
Oh.
then we'll start from there.
Okay, let me make sure my phone's off because I don't want that to affect anything. All right, so I'm from Queens, New York, born and raised. Are you from Queens, New York? Oh, that's awesome.
See?
That's
We're
right.
East Coast
What part of
people.
Queens are you from? I was born in Jamaica, Queens. What part of Jamaica, Queens? Oh yeah, my mom worked at Rosedale. Yeah. Small world. So, the story starts there. I like to say I have the whole rose that grew from concrete story, right? Projects, welfare, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. This is officially the most diva moment of all time. Thank you so much. So, born and raised Jamaica, Queens, again, rose that grew from concrete story. I had the good fortune to go to boarding school for high school on a full scholarship. And it was then that I actually got to see how the other half lived, right? I went to school with Rockefellers and Fords and all that stuff. And the most salient kind of part about that experience is that I was able to compete with them, right? And I got to see what wealth actually was. I knew I always wanted to be rich, but I really knew I wanted to be wealthy after that experience. And it was then that I realized that opportunity was opportunity. And I knew, I think I was 14 years old at the time, I said I had one goal in life, and that was to get as wealthy as possible as quickly as possible. I realized that there are 3 ways to do it. The first was to be an actor or an athlete. That didn't work out for me too well at all. The second way was to work on Wall Street. I did. I was an oil trader on Wall Street for 2 years, hated it, hated every bit of it. It was the worst experience of my entire life. And the day I really realized that, I said, shit, I've exhausted 2 of the 3 options here. The last one is entrepreneurship. I hate this place so much. Let me get as far away literally and figuratively as possible from Wall Street. I heard that there's a school called Stanford for business school. I applied. It was the only place I applied because I literally want to get as far away as like Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean. And I got in. Like, that's legitimately the story. And I got in about a week after I was let go at JP Morgan in January of 2008. Now, this was like a crazy time because at the end of the year, you get your bonuses and all that stuff. My wife and I had just bought an apartment in Queens. And we were just renovating, and I lost my job. I didn't know if I was getting into business school, all that stuff. Turns out, I got into business school, I got my bonus, I got 9 months of severance. I was just chilling at home until business school. September came. We left in August, moved out here, and then we realized that Silicon Valley existed. I didn't know about Silicon Valley at all. I just knew Stanford was an entrepreneurial place, and it was far away from Wall Street. And I knew I wanted to be a part of it. In that first year of business school, also worked full-time at Twitter when there were about 20 people at the company. In between my first and second year of business school, joined Foursquare, and then the rest is history.
Very cool.
Yeah. Sorry, I was very verbose in that
No.
description. But
So you actually led us right to the next question, which is Foursquare. So the story about go out in partnership,
Yeah.
businesses, and you end up getting 300 in a week.
yeah.
So please share your ways with the students because they're at the ideation phases and trying
Yeah.
to get partnerships and really get out there and interact
Sure.
with the company.
So the infamous Foursquare story. God, I've told this story about 8,000
Yeah,
times.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, I'm happy to do it. Has anyone heard it? Oh, it's one person. Damn, I'm like waiting for that one room where like no one's heard it, and it's like the most amazing story ever. So here we go. So it was June, July of 2009. Foursquare had just started in March of 2009. And it was just Dennis and Naveen, the founders at the time, right? And I knew I wanted to be a part of the company. So I reached out to Dennis and Naveen. I sent them 8 emails. The 8th time, Dennis actually replied back, and he said verbatim, he said, "You know what? I just may take you up on some of this. Are you ever in New York? Dens," right? That's his shortened name. And I was in LA at the time with my wife, and I looked at my wife and I said, "What should I say?" Like, it took me 8 emails to get a reply from this guy. I want to make sure I don't F it up. So 5 minutes later, I replied back. I said, "Actually, yeah, I was planning on being in New York tomorrow." I booked my flight that night, flew out the following morning, hung out with him for a week, and a month later, I was running business development for the company, really as its like first employee. Crazy, right? And I think we had 10,000 users at the time. It's in the tens and tens and tens of millions now, right? We had 0 merchants. We're in the millions now. We had 0 brands. Well, at least from when I was there, we were in the tens of thousands of brands. It's probably way higher now. And that was just a story of perseverance. Like literally, I walked up to the 5th floor in our little shoddy office. I knocked on the door, no one answered. I opened it. Dennis turned around, looked surprised, because I guess he didn't think that I was actually coming. And I did a beeline to the chair right next to him, sat down, and started working. And he said, "Sign up 30 businesses in a week." I signed up 300, and it worked out. And literally, the rest is history there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So a couple tips or pointers that you can share with why and how that worked for you?
Yeah. Well, which part?
Getting 300.
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of 30.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, I knew I could get to 300. He's the person who said 30, and I said, okay, right away. So it started with that. And I knew I could do it faster than the month that he allotted for me. And then what it just boiled down to is just pure hustle, right? I knew as a user of the service, the type of business offering I wanted to bring to the service, right? It was a perfect moment when Dennis was like, "What do you want to do with us?" And the only role I could say was business development because it had the word business in it. I was going to business school, and it actually made a lot of sense. Yeah. Like today, I get a lot of emails from folks who want to get advice on business development. It's like, I don't even know what business development is, right? Because I just like made up that title myself, right? It's not traditional. I almost think about that role as more of a product role than business development. And then we just kind of put business principles around that product or feature that would enhance the user experience. Mm-hmm. So the first tip is enhance the user experience first, right? Like don't worry about the business. If you kind of get mind share, from people. You build a product that people love, like the business stuff will follow. And for us, every business thing was still core to our product. We did a lot of business things that like people had no idea was a business feature, right? But it just felt very core to the product. And as long as you're true to the user, kind of getting business partners, getting users excited about that, like it's easier than people think. The second thing is just focus, focus, focus. And I think a lot of people, when they start getting into business deals, et cetera, they want to get as many businesses on the platform as possible. Number one, we couldn't do it because we were limited in terms of bandwidth. I was the only person doing it, right? And there was a point where I was getting 600 new emails every single day, right? Like legitimately. And I had to potentially reply to every single one. But there's no way I could work with 600 new businesses every single day and give them a high touch experience. For the large brands, I said, all right, there are so many verticals in the world. You have like auto, publishing, retail, et cetera. I was like, let me go after the number one kind of brand within each, right? So on publishing, it was like the New York Times. Retail, it was Starbucks. Television, we work with Bravo Television. With CPG, we worked with Pepsi. I think we had 10 brands, and we launched them all at the same time. And this was in March of 2010, right before the next South by Southwest. And that South by Southwest was the time when we really kind of pulled away from the pack, because it was like us versus Gowalla versus every other location-based service that existed. And we went in the South by Southwest with 10 of the most marquee brands, like really on the planet, who wanted to promote us. And everybody else, the great thing about it is that everyone else had to chase number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So we came out of South by Southwest completely separated from the pack and kind of ran from there. So focus and user.
Very cool. And then the persistence aspect of it, right? So you sent 8 emails before you got a response. I think that's kind of a point that everybody here doesn't really know, that fine line of like being a stalker versus being persistent. So if you can kind of like talk to that point and kind of, you know, at what point do you think that you kind of have to give up on that and maybe move on to another opportunity?
Yeah, so that was my last email. I was going to email them again.
You're like, eight's the cap.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know or you know, right? You know, it's a blessing and a curse, because now I get a lot of emails from folks and they always think that they have to email me 8 times before I reply back to them. It's like it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. So for me, there are a couple things about Foursquare. I was willing to work with them or work for them for free, even without their knowing. Like, I was so passionate about the company that like I just wanted it to succeed, that I was willing to do work for them even without their realizing it, right? So I got to this point where it's like, all right, if you're not willing to give me the opportunity, when you only have 10,000 users, nobody's like knocking down your door to like do the same thing. Is willing to work for free, has brought kind of really great ideas for you, and there's no strings attached. If you're not willing to engage me on that, then it's probably not the right company for me to be working with anyway. And fortunately, as luck would have it, Dennis sent me that email back. And it was the best thing that ever happened in my career. But that was it, right? Like, hadn't he emailed me back, I would have just thought that and found another potential, like, very early stage company that I loved and done the same thing until I got to that point.
Awesome. Now, can you kind of bridge the gap between working for someone else and then finally taking the run on your own company?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm still working for people. I have a board and like investors and all that stuff. And it's not very different. The only difference is, like, as a CEO, I don't do much day-to-day work anymore, right? Like, all of it is just, like, it's true. It's just management of kind of employees, making sure that they're communicating with each other. We're at a scale now and a diversity of offering that, like, that's required.
Right.
I mean, we have a 6 product kit right now. We're gonna have another product soon, another brand soon. But even that 6 product kit is like 50 different component parts. So you have the supply chain stuff. Then we have to build our HR infrastructure, right? Then we had to grow our customer base, right? So from a marketing brand perspective and performance marketing perspective, our customer success team has to be stacked, right? What kind of organization are we? Are we matrixed or are we monolithic? How does it look with 1 brand versus 2, right? And I haven't even talked about things that I need to do for work, right? Like, that's it. And the majority of the rest of the time is just recruiting, which is different from when I was like kind of leading business development. Is like, that was my job, and I need to be the best person in the world at that job, like the best person in the world at that job. It's hard. Like, I really don't have an archetype for the best person in the world for this job. You know what I'm saying? Because no one's ever done this job before. It's a weird, nuanced thing. And the only kind of similarity to Foursquare there is like the whole location-based thing was relatively new, but the thing that I was doing in the context of it was just never done before. So I was able to out-execute people 30 years my senior because there was no context of how things should be done, right? And it's very much the same now, right? Like nobody has any idea how it should be done. So we're really defining that for a lot of people.
Now, once a refugee, an Ethiopian immigrant to the United States is now a successful businessman running a multi-million-dollar transportation company. VOA's Tigist Germe recently documented his journey to achieving the American dream.
Growing up in the Oromia region of Ethiopia, Tashta Tufa worked alongside his 13 siblings on the family farm. He had dreams of traveling the world, but never could have imagined the twists and turns his life would take. Today, Tufa runs a company that carries some 15,000 Minnesota students to school every day. The company has a fleet of more than 300 buses and vans and just opened a new terminal on the north side of Minneapolis. Tufa says his upbringing gave him a strong work ethic.
I would say if you are young, make sure that you are washing your mama's dish. Make sure you do that. Make sure that, I think, discipline starts there and then work starts at your mom's kitchen.
Tufa came to the U.S. as a refugee in 1992 due to political reasons. He held down multiple jobs at once to pay the bills while earning a master's degree at the University of Minnesota. After that, he worked as a civil servant, then as a taxi driver. In 2003, he struck out on his own, delivering handwritten letters to public school districts seeking contracts. He started with a single van transporting homeless children. Tufa says he survived by finding people willing to give immigrants a chance.
For me to do business in Minnesota, I had to find people who look like Minnesota to help me work. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily me going out and doing business and giving services. People are comfortable with others other than you who look like them, who speaks like them, who doesn't have an accent. Sometimes you find those ways and please others and continue to do the challenging work.
The business has steadily grown, and in 2012, Tufa was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Metropolitan Economic Development Association. Tufa believes immigrants play an important role in the U.S. economy.
I think the immigrants are the reality is the immigrants do a leftover job also. There are jobs that my daughter doesn't want to do it as a native-born American, but somebody else has to do that job. I think immigrants have contributed to the country in many, many positive ways.
Tufa, a father of 5, says he prioritizes the safety of the children his company serves. Although buses typically drop off kids and leave, Etienne pays its drivers to wait until the children get inside their homes or are met by an adult. He also has strived to create a business that operates like a family.
And when I first started, everything I kept hearing was you want to be more like a family. So what we did was Carrie and myself, who's a transportation manager, we said we're going to continue that tradition and making it like family.
Tufa believes his story can be an inspiration to new immigrants. With hard work, he said, anything is possible.
Don't be lazy. Take the opportunities you have very seriously. Work hard. Don't expect magic. There's nothing free. Get prepared to work more hours and sacrifice. Sometimes you don't see your family due to your work schedule.
And if you want to be a success, he says, the American dream is alive.
Kristen worked for Wall Street, traded in oil, hated it, then decided to go and get his master's at Stanford. And during that experience, he discovered Silicon Valley, participated in a VC group, and the venture capitalists you'll find in spaces similar to where, I was hoping I got lucky. I thought she walked back because it was working. All right, so venture capitalists will house entrepreneurs with concepts and ideas. They'll pay you to stick around and because they want to be a part of the launch. And so he was able to get at least over 30 to 40 million, excuse me, in investment to start his business, launch and scale. Today, he's in DJ Khaled music videos. He's referenced in rap songs. He was listed in Forbes. He's hit it within less than 4 years, right? Now, your other entrepreneur didn't have the same path. So as I'd say teams of 2 or 3, I'd love for you to talk about what you think the turning point was for both entrepreneurs. The background is very different. You know, if you saw them in the street, maybe you think that they were brothers, right? You wouldn't be able to tell their story. Now that you know, can you assess what the turning points were? Can you assess what the resources were for the entrepreneurs? And can you talk to me about the differences in the outcome? All right, so I'm gonna give you like 3 to 4 minutes. Get in a group, 2 to 3, talk about it. So what did you think the differences were when it came to the turning point? What would you say the turning point was for entrepreneur A in comparison to entrepreneur B?
What I suggested was the turning point for both of them. So for entrepreneur A was when his mentor, when he was like a kid, like saw potential in him and recommended for him to apply to boarding school. And then that opened up like a lot of resources for him because like the fact that going to boarding school, like it's a school system that doesn't have an issue with money or resources. And then that also allows him to go to Stanford, which is like a very big institution that has like a lot of resources available to their students. And then for entrepreneur B, we think that the turning point was the job and moving to the US. And then having to like deal with the cultural shock and then probably like a language barrier since he moved here in his 40s. And then having to work like a lot of jobs just to reach his goal.
Right. Awesome. All right, back there. What were you guys thinking?
We were a group of 2. Is Entrepreneur B the one in DJ Khaled's video?
I have a video for both of them, but I'm just out of luck with technology today. Entrepreneur B is from Ethiopia.
Okay, so A is the one. Okay, so I feel like the turning point is when, for Entrepreneur A, when he saw that he wasn't really enjoying his time at Wall Street. Therefore, he decided to make a change and decided to do something that he's passionate about. So I feel like that's the turning point for A.
That's a great point. All right, guys. You guys are having fun. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the biggest perspective change is obviously this gentleman who came as a political refugee into the U.S. I think that was the biggest changing point. Just to get the opportunity to come as a refugee is immense on itself. So obviously he wouldn't have had the same opportunity in his home country versus getting the opportunity to come and make his own name.
Okay. And what about entrepreneur A?
Well, he because he's younger also, he got to see which light shined the brightest for himself, and he was able to get succeed on that and take advantage of his opportunities.
Okay. All right. Next group up here.
Yeah. So what we kind of tried to do was find a common turning point, so something that both shared, and for us was that they were giving an opportunity. Because both of these guys came from a poor background, and their life changed when they were given an opportunity. And that's, in our opinion, what really made the difference.
I like that. All right.
So again, reiterating what some of the other groups had said, being a political refugee to the United States, entrepreneur indeed, coming into the United States as an immigrant with nothing in his 40s, there wasn't a lot that was coming to help support him. He had to work all these jobs and not a lot of things opened up as a result. And what we discussed was when he got laid off, it seemed to be like that trigger that said to him, you know, I could keep going through these jobs or I could try to do something that would benefit me and create this brand new start that I've been looking for this entire time I was here.
And then with Entrepreneur A, which you guys also been mentioned by other groups, like the big turning point that we felt was when he had the mentor of the coach, who was able to kind of lead him down a path where he was able at a young age to start learning more about businesses, entrepreneurship, and then he was able to kind of grow with that as his life continued on.
So I will send the video. I'm so sorry I couldn't play the video. But during the video interview with Tristan, he talked about seeing how the other side lives, right? There's a culture shock when it comes to going to a boarding school where the wealth gap is hugely different. And so the conversation that he has in his interviews, and I encourage you to look him up, has a lot to do with understanding wealth, understanding access to capital, and what it would take to scale, period, personally and for your company. So when I listen to interviews for Entrepreneur B, his scale process took years, right? This was 2003 into 2018. The scale process was his own capital. It was the 3, 4, 5 jobs, the contracts. But Tristan knew that he could raise the capital within a couple of years. He turned his concept into a multi-million-dollar business in less than 3 years. So where was the knowledge resource, if you were to guess, where the knowledge resource came in his life, during the stages that we just discussed, where do you think all the pivotal points were? First was the coach. All the coach did was say, hey, apply here, right? It's not like he had time with the coach. He was a basketball coach. Right? And then it was exposure to culture, completely different from yours. Right? I'm Haitian. I go to Haiti, I eat my griot, my zili, my soswa, I speak Creole, and I have a good time. But then when I transition to a culture that the people don't look like me, they don't sound like me, their resources are completely different. That knowledge, that access to awareness, how much of a change could that have made in a high school student, because he's in high school? Thoughts?
I think it can make a lot. I mean, from my experience, and I'm sure a lot of other experiences of students here, like in my high school experience, the parents were little entrepreneurs, or they were nurses, or and then you have the occasional person, for example, at my school, one of their parents owned a flight school, and so you could see just like you were saying, the wage gap between him and me. And I think his exposure with being in a boarding school, just his friends' parents, maybe we're talking business deals or something, he can get information and inspiration and help from something like that. And I know that, I'm sure his friends, maybe growing up in an environment like that, had knowledge that he, wouldn't be succumbed to. So I'm sure he got, little inklings here and there from even his high school experience. Just from
I actually call it kitchen table talk, right? Growing up, my mom worked 2, 3 jobs. I was a real latchkey kid, similar to Tristan, right? And there was literally no kitchen table talk. She was working. She didn't have time to talk. In comparison to other families where they're talking about what's happening financially at the home, at the table, right? The conversation may not be in the forefront. I may not be sitting you down, but I'm watching you. I'm hearing you talk about your work. I'm hearing and I'm watching the culture. Oh, they're telling me. I'm so sorry. I forgot about the mic. And so that early exposure was transforming. So the video that I didn't get to show you regarding Entrepreneur B is that during the process of him trying to start his business, he hand wrote letters asking for contracts. He was like, hey, can I have a contract for busing your students? And came up with unique ways of picking up the students, making sure that the students walked to their house, gave like a unique courtesy situation, and slowly but surely, after a few handwritten notes, started to network. Started to network with government and individuals within economic development departments within his city. And traditionally, when you hear economic development, that means that that is a part of the government trying to increase jobs, right? And so his networking helped him to gain contracts into now. But the scale process, completely different. Any other turning points we want to point out?
I think that getting laid off would be a major wake-up call.
I don't know how many of you remember the recession. I do. And so being laid off, in addition to having several jobs, that's a great turning point for entrepreneur. Technology is not working with me. Did you hear it cut out? This is terrible. All right. So I promise to send it to you. So everybody had a turning point. Could you assess a moment in time in your own life where you yourself had a turning point that led you to this moment, that led you to choosing the major that you've chosen? Thoughts? Anybody? Entrepreneurs don't always look like this. They might look like this, right? There are entrepreneurs who actually don't go to school for business and end up inventing some type of product and scaling. There are a few chemistry majors that ended up creating beauty products that became entrepreneurs. So when it comes to your why, your reason for majoring in what you are majoring in, it was a turning point, right? Can anybody share with me their turning point?
Well, as a kid, I grew up in Spain and I always thought I wanted to be an architect. I was fascinated by like designing buildings and houses and all of that. And I came to the US in my junior year in high school, thinking that I was going to be this architect here in the US, having this nice life, steady income. But then I saw how businesses worked here and how much respect people had for businessmen and for entrepreneurs. And that just changed my mind in like less than a year. And I ended up choosing international business as my major.
Was there a particular person that you identified with specifically?
Not really, because I don't like to like idolize people, but I definitely had like a lot of people coming down like from rags to riches and seeing them succeed without doing college degrees, just because the culture here is so prone to spending, and so I thought that it was just a perfect opportunity for me to like start up a business or to pursue a business career.
Any other turning points? I thought I saw a hand. Yes.
Over the summer, I had an opportunity to work at a radio station, and I used to be in print for journalism, and now I do broadcast. And just being in that environment and being able to be in those energies all day, I realized that writing all day isn't what I wanted to do, and I don't know, now I'm happy.
Awesome. Any other turning points anyone wants to share?
Well, this was kind of just recent, but I met up with an old coworker of mine that we connected through LinkedIn again. And she told me that she had started her own business and to come check it out. So I went and I talked to her and I checked out the business. And then I talked to my current bosses and we're working on a partnership with her. Wow. And so then I realized that, you know, if she could do it, if she could start her own business, then so can I, because I've always wanted to start my own business. But this one, you know, now I just kind of realize that it's a little bit easier than I thought it would be. It's not as intimidating, and the kind of support that I have now with my current bosses and with her and with everybody, like that it's totally possible. So like I've been talking with them about the business that I'm going to start, and they've like supported me, and they really like my idea, and so that was just really recently ago. Like it's not something it's like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago that we just started doing that.
Wow. So your network. Right? Your network. Now, do you still believe in the bungee jumper entrepreneur? No, I don't either. The difference between your regular job and an entrepreneur is mitigated risks, right? So entrepreneurs on both sides have assessed what risks they're willing to take and what risks they're not. And even when it comes to investors, like venture capitalists that invested in Tristan, it was a mitigated risk, meaning that they counted the cost on his concepts and ideas and felt like, okay, if this is a really good idea, and with his network, we can jump on board and scale with him. I have some nerdy topics regarding, the immigrant experience when it comes to the amount of jobs created by immigrant entrepreneurs, right? 34.2 million. Did you know that a lot of your grocery stores in the United States are immigrant owners? And that a majority of the businesses listed this year, that 500 list that comes out annually, a majority of them are either immigrant owners or they are part of the business. All right. So it turns out that Florida is number 2. We're under California when it comes to immigrant entrepreneurs creating jobs. All right, so I'll let you guys inhale that. So California's above us, Florida's next, and then it's Texas. 65.5 billion in business from immigrant entrepreneurs. Bungee jumpers? That's a lot of bungee jumping, right? No? Okay. So now let's talk about you. Because I'm in full belief that you came here because you want to be a first-generation entrepreneur and that you want to launch something new and that it is your turn to profile yourself. Okay, so now that you have found your groups and that you've discussed what it is to be an entrepreneur, whether it's the sexy version or the version that has been able to feed families locally, what is your profile as a potential entrepreneur? What resources do you have? Who do you know? What accesses are available, not just within your network, but even here at FIU? So you're going to jump into those same groups. This is some more numbers. And you're going to tell me what you consider to be your accesses and your barriers to you becoming an entrepreneur. So let's get back in our teams. Let's talk about it. Let's hear about it while my mic is working for 2 seconds. Okay, entrepreneurs, I'm going to start with you guys in the back. Tell us about what you consider to be resources, barriers for you becoming an entrepreneur.
I guess one of the resources is that I live in this country. I think that's the reason why all of this is possible for Entrepreneur A and B. My family runs a business and it's a party rental company. So for me, that's like, I get to watch my family do what they do and learn from their ways. And I also like to think that I can open up my own opportunities, even if I didn't have that motivation in my life.
Yeah, I feel like I live in this country and there's so many things I can do. I go and knock on the right doors, as well as knowing the language. That's important. I'm from Pennsylvania, so Pennsylvania and Miami, or Pennsylvania and Florida, are very, very different. People are very different. I know how to, I guess, how the people up north behave as opposed to the people down here in the south. So, yeah.
So cultural challenges, cultural differences?
Going along that line.
I think a good resource is definitely like our FIU community. So I mean that's something that I think we all share in this room. So that's really unique, and it goes beyond like the networks that I've been able to engage with. go beyond the typical like just faculty or staff or whatever it may be. Like you engage with all the alumni that are graduates of the university and stuff like that. So it's a really large network.
All right, so talk to me about some barriers.
The capital, like how to find that first amount of money to start up your business.
That's a good one. Did you hear that? Access to capital? Okay.
And also like having the right connections, because like even though like I know a lot of people, depending on what you really want to do and what you want your business to look like in the future, you need to like know what people to interact with.
So what are you guys going to do to mitigate that challenge?
I think that's just like establish the adequate connections and then make sure like they're not just like a one-time thing. Make sure that you like establish the relationship with like the other person.
So let's help him find some concrete answers, right? So barrier is network, access to capital. FIU is a network within itself. Any ideas regarding resources right here at FIU that he could participate in to help with the barriers he just mentioned? FIU, okay. Mentorship, alumni, internship. And when it comes to your concept of what you want to do, what's the industry? No, but what industry are you in? What's your major? Okay, big deal, right? So it turns out, traditionally, every single industry has an association, chamber. They have their own cliques. They have their own groups. And I'll give an example. While I was working on my master's, I was working for someone who turned out to be a mentor. She was super successful, but you would never know it because she just said, "Hey, my name is Nancy." She had several doctorates, 7 titles. I had to look her up, wrote several books. And I watched her. And it turned out that healthcare was her thing. Healthcare was her industry. Healthcare is not my industry. But I watched her attend networking events I didn't know existed. I did not know that there were several networking associations focused in on a specific industry. And so before the year was out, I met every CEO and CFO of every hospital and insurance company in South Florida from attending those events. Didn't know they existed, right? So if you are majoring in communications, in chemistry, in finance, in business, there are actual associations, clubs outside of FIU where the individuals you would hope to learn from, be mentors to you, work for, are attending. So that could be one opportunity to overcome a barrier. And it might be a really easy way to find a job right before you graduate. Just a thought. All right. So benefits, resources, barriers.
Barriers. Well, definitely money. Obviously, that's the biggest barrier. We were just speaking of our personal experiences and how I wanted to start a business. She has already started a business, and basically, like, our experiences is that we just can't fully focus on business right away. You have to, like, for example, I work full-time and I go to school full-time, so starting a business is literally a hobby. So we don't have the same opportunity as somebody who already has an established business and it's being passed down to them, because they're able to fully focus on it from the start, and they kind of already have like a backup plan or just like a safety net. We don't have that. We have to succeed or move on or whatever, because that's it. You know, you don't have anything else.
But you read about Entrepreneur B. He had like 15 jobs, right? While he was running his business. So do you believe that it's possible?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't say it wasn't possible.
Okay.
It's just like you have to have that extra barrier of having to work the jobs, and when coming home from work being really tired, okay, let me work on my financials and network and do all these different things. You have an added barrier, very added. see a hand on fire.
I wanted to bounce off that idea, and of course, it's not impossible to be able to raise the funds, but in a situation like Entrepreneur B, who had to work 5 jobs, another barrier could be a timeline. The amount of time that you're willing to dedicate to your life to this business that you're hoping will be able to grow, not only investing that money, but investing your time. So that is also something to consider, especially for Entrepreneur B. That was also a big risk too, because it was essentially what he was planning on doing for his retirement.
Okay, hand on fire. Let's go.
Yeah, we actually consider time as one of our assets, because most people in this room are like in their like late teens or early 20s. And if you compare this to like the guy who was 40 years old, had to probably take care of his family, they have so many things that are dragging them down while we have so much time in our hands. And yeah, so that's why we put access as one of our, as one of our assets. And then as one of our barriers, this was her idea actually, I don't want to take credit of it, but we thought that the environment was probably one of our barriers, like what you were talking about, the whole kitchen situation. Because we're not in the social circle where we know a lot of like funding or a lot of investor people, and or banks. So that's another barrier for us too.
So these are awesome examples for resources and barriers. And so I have advice and I have a challenge. All right. So here's my advice. And this is something I learned from mentors I've been able to collect through life. Every mentor has challenged me to network outside of my ecosystem. Every mentor has challenged me to never stop learning. And so one of the lessons I can take out of Tristan's experience was the fact that he did not have to become as successful despite the exposure. It was what he did with the awareness and the knowledge, right? And so access to capital is a challenge for a lot of small businesses. But his ability to learn how to pitch for funding, how to assess pain points, and how to design a business within an area that he could scale was his knowledge. If Entrepreneur B had the exposure to assessing how other entrepreneurs gained access to capital, could his fleet of buses have scaled in a couple of years in comparison to the decade that it took? Knowledge, right? So I'm challenging you to take a look at Startup FIU. They actually have a proof of concept center. Say Anna sent me. Take a look at your industry and find what resources are available, not just within FIU, but outside of FIU. And before this year is out, recruit your own industry mentor. All right, before we exit, I think we have like 3 minutes. Any questions? Was this helpful? So my goal, hopefully, is to circle back, I give you a year, to say, hey, Anna, I attended this talk, and this is where I am in my vision. This is where I am with my goals, and this is what I took away from today. So thank you guys so much, and enjoy lunch. All right.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you all for coming. Please, we have plenty of food left over there, so if anyone would like anything, it would be a great help, or else it's going to go to waste, which is a crime. So if anyone needs to know anything about this presentation will be available on the Go Global website, and you can reach out to us in the Office of Global Learning Initiatives. My name's Gregory. The gent who usually hosts it is Eric. We'll be here pretty much every Tuesday of the semester. Like I say, take a schedule, which is up there near the food, And last thing, if you haven't signed in, please do. It's very helpful. And thank you. Have a good day.
Produced by Academic Video Services within the Division of Information Technology at Florida International University.